Hello, and welcome to the Muses Lab, your destination for all things pleasure as it relates to our human experience, relationships, spirituality, and sexuality. I invite you to join me on this adventure of discovery and hope what you receive inspires you to become the muse of your life's journey. So without further ado, let's explore. Hello, and welcome to the Muses Lab podcast. I am your host, Siobhan L., and I know it's been a long time, and I shouldn't have left you, but life has been lifing, and there have been a lot of shifts and changes that I have experienced over the last 90 days, and we're ending the Gregorian calendar of quarter 1. We're edging out of that. So at the time of this recording, it is March 28th, 2024. 2024 is the time of this recording, and we are nearing the end of Women's History Month and Endometriosis Awareness Month. And this is going to be semi-emotional for me. Hopefully I don't cry, but if I do, it is what it is. And I've actually never talked about my endo story. And the passing of Jessica Pettway, who was one of the beauty influencers that I followed during my natural hair journey, learning about skincare, learning about makeup. She was one of the first beauty influencers that I came across during my research and during my journey. So to hear of her passing and to know that her passing was from cervical cancer, a misdiagnosis of cervical cancer, it triggered me in so many ways. And I started speaking about parts of my journey with endometriosis, parts of my story with endometriosis. I specifically talked about, and this is on Instagram, so the Muses Lab. If you don't follow me on social media, so I am the Muses Lab, or at the Muses Lab on TikTok and Instagram and Threads. But this post is on Instagram, and I talked about how the nurse practitioner was part of my gynecological care team at the time. When I expressed to her that I was experiencing hot flashes at the age of 37, she dismissed me and was like, "Oh, you're just being dramatic. You're too young to be perimenopausal, but we'll do some tests just to rule it out. We don't want to, invalidate what you're feeling, even though, like she did in so many ways. We're going to do the test." And the test came back negative. But 3 years later, 2 years later, I had my last menstrual cycle. No, it was 3. 3 years later, I had my last menstrual cycle, September of 2020. And in April of 2021, I was, I don't think it's called a diagnosis, but I found out I was post-menopausal. I wasn't even perimenopausal. I was post-menopausal. And that was hard for me because I am now 42, edging on 43, and I don't have children. And I don't know if I can physically have children, but whether or not I wanted to know that the option was taken away from me without my consent, and no one paid attention to what I was saying, to what I was experiencing, and to be dismissed in that way, it broke me. And that's just the latter half of my story and my journey of being a person living with endometriosis. And to my knowledge, there's no cure. There have been people who, through holistic means, have been able to reduce symptoms almost to a minimum, to even appear as if they have, in quotes, air quotes, cured the disease. But it is a disease that you live with for the rest of your life. And it's taxing on the body. Unfortunately, it's not considered a disability, even though there are people who are lobbying for it to be considered a disability because it becomes debilitating to your life. Even though I'm stage 4 endometriosis, I do not have the same symptoms as someone who is stage 2, 3, or 1. And there are a lot of uterus owners, people with uteruses, vulva owners, who are stage 1, who experience extreme and debilitating pain. And I've never really experienced pain, although I went to a conference last year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend this year. I went to the Endo Black conference with Endo Black Incorporated. They're based out in the DC area. Lauren Cornegay is the founder of Endo Black, HBCU Love. She is a Morgan State graduate. And she created this beautiful organization to bridge the gap in information for Black women who have endometriosis, because we are more than many, right? And there are not a lot of resources out there for us. So she created this organization to bridge that gap, and she has done amazing things. She is now interweaved into the government. She was at the White House not too long ago. She has expanded, and she's doing amazing things. And it was not until I went to her conference and listened to the other stories of other vulva owners, persons with uteruses who have endo, that I realized that I've been experiencing endo flares my entire adult life. Like, people would talk about endo flares. I'm like, I don't have those. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I have periods where my body shuts down, and I thought, it was like chronic fatigue syndrome, because I had a doctor diagnose me with chronic fatigue syndrome my sophomore year in college in the summer. It's like, your zinc levels are low, you're zinc deficient, you're experiencing chronic fatigue syndrome. All of those symptoms that I was given a diagnosis or a prognosis from my general practitioners were all symptoms of endometriosis, and nobody just put the clues together. I found this out later in life. And when I'm talking about later in life, I'm like after like the 4th myomectomy I realized that throughout my life as a menstruating person, I had been experiencing symptoms that were indicative to endometriosis, and nobody put those clues together. I didn't know, because I'm not a doctor. And I didn't even know about endometriosis until I got to college. And I have 2 friends who I'm still friends to. One I need to call, but who I'm still friends with this day. When I would tell them about my symptoms, they would ask me, like, are you sure you don't have endometriosis? And I'm like, no, because, I go get pap smears, and, doctors tell me I'm fine, and blah, blah, blah. And the importance of advocating for yourself, 1, the importance of educating yourself, 2, and the importance of having other people, other community to help inform and advocate you are super, super important. Because as Black women, and that is who I'm speaking to right now. So if you are somebody who is non-Black and you're listening to this, do not feel offended, but this is for the DEIs. Strictly for the DEIs. Okay. As Black women, our experience in the healthcare system pales in comparison to any other racial identity in America. I can only speak on America because I'm American and this is where I live. And I'm not aware of the other experiences that people have outside of the United States. But healthcare in the United States is trash. It is even more trash for Black women identifying persons, Black persons with vulvas, Black persons with uteruses. It is even more trash for us. So as Black women navigating this horrible healthcare system that we are in, because diversity or inclusion in healthcare curriculum is not taught, doctors, particularly gynecologists, will dismiss your symptoms and dismiss your pain as the strong Black woman archetype, or particularly if you are queer, queer and mass presenting, they will dismiss your symptoms. Oh, you just be bumping coochies. You okay? No. That does not dismiss me from having the same symptoms as someone who lives their life as a cisgender heteronormative person, right? So even those nuances, and we start talking about intersectionality, even those nuances make a difference in how Black persons with uteruses and vulvas experience gynecological care. So when you really understand the disparity, the inequity there, it makes you want to become an advocate, uh, a person who absorbs all of the information about reproductive care and gynecological care, because you have to come in smarter than the doctor at this point. Because if you don't, your pain, your experiences, all the things that you are feeling with your body are going to be dismissed. And that's literally what happened to me from the time I became a sexually active individual. I started my menstrual cycle at the age of 10 or 11, somewhere around there, somewhere between the 4th and the 5th grade. That's how long that's my recollection of when I received my menstrual cycle. So I got my menstrual cycle between the 4th and the 5th grade. So I've been a menstruating individual since before I was a teenager, which I'm an 80s baby. So back then that was like unheard of to have your period at like in the 5th grade. That's like a rare occasion, right? You think people typically receive or not receive, but people get their menstrual cycle. It comes, your body goes in that pubescent stage, and you're like teens, 13, 14, 15, you hear people getting their menstrual cycles around that time. I was already, before I was in high school, I was menstruating. So I was ahead of the curve without wanting to be ahead of the curve. And praise be that I was not around any predatory men, because I can't even imagine at 10 or 11 being pregnant due to some form of assault or other type of unwanted sexual activity from an older gentleman or someone that was not my age. So thank God I wasn't around any predatory people around those times. But that's unnerving to know that at 10 or 11 that you can pop out a baby out of your vagina. Like, that's wild. But that was my life. And when I became sexually active at 16, my mother immediately put me on birth control, which I get, right? We don't want you to have no babies. That's not the path. That's not your path, right? So my mother immediately put me on birth control, and hindsight is 2020. What you don't know is that the birth control is altering your hormones, right? You don't realize that then. All you're thinking about is, my skin is a little clearer. I'm not really getting these debilitating cramps, which you're not supposed to have in the first place. But all you know is that these PMS symptoms that you typically get, not on birth control, those symptoms have been mitigated in some way. However, the side effect is that your ass is as big, is whatever. You blow up like a balloon or whatever, and your weight is challenging. And that's for someone who's a teenager to go from a massive weight shift between the age of 16 and 17. That was weird for me. I was already busty. I became even more busty. I became even more voluptuous at 16, 17. And I was a petite child, but to fully develop before I even hit college, birth control advanced that. And I was on birth control until I was maybe about 21, 22. When I went into college, that's when I came across my friends who have endometriosis and have been experiencing debilitating cramps, I need to take a day off. I'm having an endo flare. Like, I didn't know anything about the symptoms, but I wasn't experiencing those same things. So I just dismissed what may have been happening within my body. And it was my junior year, sophomore year first. No, junior year. My junior year, I missed my period. And I figured maybe it was because of stress. My period was like a complete month late. At one point, I thought I was pregnant. And then a month later, I got my cycle and I thought I was okay. I'm skipping parts. Somewhere in between sophomore and junior year, I woke up in the middle of the night in pain, excruciating pain. I couldn't figure out what it was. In the days leading up to that, I thought I was feeling gassy. I thought it was gas. And it was a pain on the left side of my waist, like left side of my uterus. And it was just this tight, crampy pain. And I was like, oh, am I getting my period? Maybe I just need to use the bathroom. Maybe I need to go do a number 2. And I'm like drinking teas and drinking water, trying to flush whatever it is out, but it's not, the pain's not going away. And it comes and goes. It comes and goes. It's like this intense vibrating pain, right? It's going in and out. And one morning, it was like 2:00 in the morning, I sat up, straight up in the bed, in pain, excruciating pain, keeled over, just in so much pain. And I was having a really bad discord with my former roommates. And I was scared to even call the ambulance because I didn't want to wake up the house. I didn't want to do anything. So I sat in pain for like hours before I finally was like, fuck it, I'm going to just call the ambulance and have them come get me. So by that time, I was able to walk a little bit. I was in the hospital for hours. Must have been 6 or 7 hours. I got a transvaginal done. I got an ultrasound done. And that's when I found out I had cysts on my ovary. The doctor I had at the time, Black gentleman, Black gynecologist. Well, he wasn't even a gynecologist. He was a general practitioner, cosplaying as a gynecologist. There are just so many things that I just didn't know then because I was in Atlanta by myself. So I went to Clark Atlanta University. So I'm going to name landmarks. And if you're familiar with Atlanta, you're going to know what I'm talking about. I wasn't at Grady. I was in a hospital in the SWATs. I wasn't at Grady. I was in a hospital in the SWATs. I don't even think that hospital is in existence. And I went there. I was in hospital for hours and found out I had cysts on my ovary. The doctor who was there prescribed me naproxen, which is the generic form of Aleve. What he did not tell me is that I was only supposed to use it for pain. I ended up taking naproxen every day, which eventually messed up the lining of my stomach, and I became lactose intolerant. That's one, right? So when this is happening to me, this is post 9/11. So I'm going to give you a timeline. My junior year in college, post 9/11, 2001. Post 9/11. In the hospital once. I move in between there. My father comes down, moves me. I move to Buckhead. First, I'm living behind Spelman. Castleberry. It's probably called something different now. But Castleberry is where I was living. I moved to the Darlington in Buckhead. A week after my father left, when he moved me, I woke up in the middle of the night again. Now I'm going to the hospital for a second time. Across the street from the Darlington is Piedmont Hospital. I was dating someone at the time. He and I, because they refused to send me a transport, I could barely walk, but they refused to send me a transport. So I walked across the street to the hospital, to the ER in my pajamas. They made me put on a hospital gown. And you know, when you got to put on a hospital gown, you got to come up out your clothes. So I'm in a hospital gown in triage in the middle of the floor, and they left me there for 90 minutes. I'm in pain. I'm screaming in pain because they left me. They literally put me in a hospital gown, put me on a gurney, and they left me in the middle of the triage floor. Piedmont Hospital. It might still be in existence. I don't know. Might still be there, but Piedmont Hospital left me in the middle of the triage floor by myself for 90 minutes. No painkiller, no attendee, no room, no nothing. By the time they did that, I had to scream to the top of my lungs for someone to get someone's attention, for someone to come to me and actually put me in the room. Had I not done that, they would have left me in my hospital gown with my ass out in pain in the middle of the triage floor. It's the second time I was in the hospital. We're still in 2001. They were not able to service me because my doctor at the other hospital refused to release my medical records. All they were able to do was the ultrasound to see the cysts, which were not big enough for them to do any type of surgery. They couldn't do anything else. They had to release me. They gave me another prescription for naproxen. My mother flew into town that day because by that time, flights were like $2 because of everything that happened. She flies into Atlanta, packs a bag. I go home. This is in the middle of my junior year. I had to file for incomplete. I had to restart classes. I was only able to finish maybe 2 or 3 of my classes, and I had to redo things all over again because once you miss a week, you've missed the whole year. And I missed 2 weeks of class being in and out of the hospital. I go home. I'm in the hospital again. Till now. 3 times I'm in the hospital, but no one can do anything because the cysts are not big enough. This time I'm given Percocets. I'm home for a couple of days. I go back to school, try to finish out the semester, go back, right? Everything seems fine. I'm on birth control again. I'm on a different formula. Birth control is not as evasive as the former prescription that I have. Gynecologist then tells me, sorry, you're just going to have to be on birth control for the rest of your life because you have recurring cysts. Okay, fine. I'm on birth control. No challenges with my menstrual cycle. Time moves on. Fast forward, that's 2001. Fast forward 12 years. Actually, fast forward 7 years. By this time, I've barely had insurance. I came out of college working at a welfare to work program. I didn't have no insurance because I was working part-time. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that. My first job out of college was a welfare to work program called Greater Patterson OIC. And I was the business communications instructor, and I was only working part-time. I should have applied for benefits because that was only $14,000 a year. That was my first job out of college. No insurance because it was only part-time. I didn't have proper insurance until I graduated college 2003, 5 years later, 2008. That's when I had proper insurance. So I went 5 years out of college with no insurance. I couldn't go get a pap smear. I couldn't go get anything. I couldn't do anything, go to general practitioner, dentist, nothing, because I didn't have no health insurance whatsoever. So fast forward, 2008, I'd just been laid off the job that I had that finally gave me insurance. I just got laid off from my job, and this was the beginning of 2008. So this was January 2008. I got laid off from my job, and I noticed my menstrual cycle was lasting longer than it normally does. And when I say lasting longer, I'm talking about weeks. That year, my period lasted for 3 weeks. Abnormal. But I don't have no insurance, so I can't do nothing about it. From 2008 to 2013, not too many challenges. Some point I got insurance again, then I was in college. Before we get to 2013, 2012. I'm supposed to have insurance because I'm in grad school. Something's wrong with my insurance. It's not going through. I have to pay for a pap smear out of pocket. But I go get a pap smear done because got to get your coochie checked, right? Cool. I go get the pap smear done. I pay for it out of pocket. As I'm standing there to settle my bill, I happen to look at my chart, which is unheard of because now they tell you information about your chart. Back then, now we're talking early 2010s, early 2010s. They still weren't really letting you look at your chart. Not for real. I happen to look at my chart, and my gynecologist at the time had me checked off for herpes and HPV. She never told me that I had herpes. She never told me I had HPV. Never said any of those things to me. I'd never been tested for herpes, had never been tested for HPV. But what I realized later, years later, is that she marked me down for those two diseases because she couldn't properly do my pap smear. Every time somebody tried to do my pap smear, I was in excruciating pain. Bookmark that. I was in excruciating pain every time someone tried to do. I hated getting a pap smear. It hurt. Discomfort. Pap smears, there's discomfort that you experience with the pap smear. It's not supposed to hurt. But there is some discomfort that you feel because you got all these metal tools up there. Then they have to do a surgical culture to test your cervical fluid. So it's uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. It is not supposed to hurt. I was in excruciating pain every single time I got a pap smear. Nobody flagged it. At this juncture, all my gynecologists have been white. 2 white women at some point, one mostly white men, right? So I'm in pain. They think I'm being dramatic. They're not flagging it. Oh, it's uncomfortable. This is beyond uncomfortable. I'm in tears. Every time I get a pap smear, I'm in tears. I'm unlocking things right now. Every time I'm experiencing a pap smear, I am in tears. I'm in pain. Nobody flagged it. But that woman had me on my chart noted as having HPV and herpes and never said a word to me. I have been tested. I have done blood work. None of those things showed up in my blood work, in my panel, my STD, STI panel. None of those things showed up. But she has in her notes on my chart that I have HPV and I have herpes. This is 2012. Bookmark that. I graduate grad school. I finished grad school. I ain't got no insurance again because I don't have a full-time job. I'm working at Lush part-time. I'm getting part-time unemployment benefits because I'm not working a 40-hour week. So this is where I'm at in my life with a master's degree because I cannot, for some reason, secure full-time employment. So I'm working at Lush. In 2013, I'm experiencing an elongated period again. This time, my menstrual cycle lasts for 4 weeks. Bookmark that. Towards the end of 2013, November to be exact, I get a teaching job. I'm working at an alternative high school. I'm teaching basic skills. Guess what I have now? Insurance. Months later, we're talking February, in late February, beginning of March. What happens again? I have another elongated period. So this time, my menstrual cycle lasts 6 weeks. But I'm not going back to that crazy ass white woman that has me with HPV and herpes on my chart. I do my research and I find me another woman of color. She's not black, close enough, Southeast Asian, works for me. But it's a woman. And a woman who can relate to what I'm experiencing because she is also another woman of color. Cool. I go see her. She's concerned. We go through all of the tests. No one has ever done that level of testing with me, ever. I got an MRI. I got a transvaginal. And if you are a vulva owner with a uterus and you have never gotten a transvaginal ultrasound, you need to ask for one. Because that's where you're going to find all the information in a transvaginal ultrasound. It's not that comfortable because they use a probe, they stick it up your coochie, and it's a light, and they see everything on the screen. But that's where you're going to see everything. That's how I found out my uterus was thin. That's how I found out if I ever got pregnant, I would be high risk pregnant. I would have a high risk pregnancy. And that's how I found out I had a cyst on my ovary. Transvaginal ultrasound. Write that down. Bookmark that. Every person with a uterus should at least at some point once a year have a transvaginal ultrasound. Because that's when you're going to find out all the details. So I got an MRI, a transvaginal ultrasound, and I got a regular ultrasound. All of that to find 2 endometrial masses on both ovaries. Your ovaries are like the size of a freaking pea. I have 2 endometrial masses on both ovaries the size of a fucking strawberry. Well, here's why I'm in pain. Here's why I'm having the elongated menstrual cycles, because I have masses on my ovaries. I got flagged for cancer 3 times. My tumor markers were so high from the masses, I got flagged for cancer 3 times. Luckily, the test came back negative. The masses were benign. So here I am preparing myself. Now we're in this is 2014. Catch a timeline. First elongated menstrual cycle, 2008. Second elongated menstrual cycle, 2013. Third elongated menstrual cycle, 2014. Now I have the right doctor. She sees the masses. We're going in for a laparotomy to remove the endometrial masses. My first surgery, follow me. My first surgery was June 2014. Went in, put in my paperwork, did all of that. Supposed to be on leave, out for 4 weeks. Everybody was talking about Kate, out for 4 weeks. That's what happens when you go get a laparotomy. When you get any type of uterine surgery, you out 4 weeks, 6 weeks. If you got that type of doctor, because they'll put you out. Right? Cool. I go in, work with the anesthesiologist, is telling me affirmations, and while he is administering the anesthetic cocktail, he's giving me affirmations. Never experienced that before in my life. Count back to 10 and it's already done. Whatever you're thinking about, it's already done. I can still hear him talking to me. I still hear it every now and again. Giving me affirmations. I wake up. I'm in my room. I'm not even in recovery. I'm in my room. One of my closest friends since 2nd grade, she's a gynecologist. So I have been keeping her informed every step of the way. She's a gynecologist and worked out of the hospital where I had my surgery. She comes into the room. We got to have a conversation. My mother's on the phone. Another good friend of mine is in my room that came to see me. She was like, look at me. We got to talk. They couldn't do the surgery. What do you mean they couldn't do the surgery? They couldn't do the surgery because my bowel had wrapped around my uterus so much that it looked like I had no anatomy. Underneath my bowel, my ovaries, my fallopian tubes, and my uterus were plastered in a ball inside my pelvic cavity with the endometrial masses, with 2 fibroids on top of my uterus. This is beyond my doctor's scope of work. Now she has to refer me out to a specialist. At this point, I think I'm an alien. June 2014, I was supposed to have a laparotomy but couldn't because all of my organs were plastered together in a ball. So you want to know why my former gynecologist couldn't do the pap smear, why every pap smear I had was in pain? Because my bowels were covering my uterus. And nobody thought to think about that. Because your bowels, which I learned, are 27 feet long. They're like little spaghetti noodles. 27 feet long, that's your bowel. You know how much time it takes for your bowel to wrap around a uterus? That doesn't happen overnight. This is over time. Check the timeline again. 2008, elongated menstrual cycle. 2013, elongated menstrual cycle. 2014, elongated menstrual cycle. Every pap smear that I had in between there was painful. No point, nobody thought to check. Well, why are you in so much pain when you have a pap smear? Could this been prevented? Maybe. Could the pain have been mitigated? Absolutely. By the time we hit 2014, I'm now stage 4 endometriosis. When I started my research on how someone even gets here, in 2001, when I was in the hospital twice, 3 times actually, and I was experiencing debilitating cramps and pain and having the cysts on my ovaries, I was already stage 3. Nobody paid attention to it. I was just shuffled off, like how in school they shuffle off the kids that actually don't know how to read and they just pass them through, shuffle them off. That's how I was. I was shuffled through the gynecological system with gynecological practitioners and general practitioners, and I was just shuffled through. Nobody paid attention. Everybody thought I was being dramatic. Everybody thought I was doing too much. Oh, it's not that bad. I know it's uncomfortable. I know you experience a little discomfort. I'm in pain. And nobody believed how much pain that I was experiencing. So now I have to wait 2 months to have this robotic surgery by the head of gynecological care in one of the largest hospitals here in New Jersey, because that's where I live currently. I have to get what they call a myomectomy. So they have to go inside my vagina, take these little things, or go inside my stomach, put incisions inside my stomach, stick these robotic hands in there, and put everything back where it's supposed to be first, before they can remove the 2 endometrial masses that are on my ovaries. My first myomectomy was September 2014. My second was 2017 because I have reoccurring fibroids. My surgery in 2017 is when I learned that I started having hot flashes. This was before my surgery. My doctor had put me on phentermine, trying to get me to lose weight because I was too heavy. I did the pre-diabetic test, found out I was pre-diabetic. Then they was trying to put me on metformin. I was on all these different medications that I could not take because it was having adverse effect with my body. And in the midst of all that, I was having hot flashes. This was also in the midst of my spiritual awakening. So I thought maybe this is a Kundalini awakening, and that's what I chalked it off to. We did the test. Everything came back negative. I had my second surgery. Almost died on the table. I bled out during surgery, and they had to put me back on the robotic machine because I almost died. Post-surgery, doctor comes in. This is the first time I had a full, all-female gynecological team. And not just all white. Pick a color. They were there. From the anesthesiologist to the surgical assistant to other surgical assistants that were there, my recovery specialist, everyone was all women. The only male that was part of my team was my actual gynecologist. So another doctor from the surgical team comes in the next day to give me updates on what happened. She told me, and I quote, "Your left fallopian tube was a little beat up. It was damaged from the endometrium, and we had to remove it. Bookmark that." So I'm like, man. So we do this surgery to find out or not a surgery, we do this test to find out if my fallopian tubes are blocked. Now, mind you, she said they had to remove my fallopian tube, but I do a test to find out if my fallopian tubes, plural, were blocked. So now that happened in 2015. We still had our fallopian tube. So I did that because 2014 I got laid off. That's the part that I missed. So I had the surgery 2014, 2015, I got laid off from my teaching job. So now I don't have no insurance again. We do that test to find out if my tubes are blocked, whether or not I can have children. One tube is blocked, the other tube is not. That's 2015. 2017, so 2 years later, I have Medicaid at this point because I was smart enough to get that. So I have Medicaid so I can have insurance. So that's how I was able to have my surgery. I'm still unemployed. At that juncture, I hadn't worked in like 2.5 years. So I have my surgery in 2017. 2017, that surgery, they tell me my left fallopian tube is gone. They had to remove it. But all you need is one fallopian tube, just like all you need is one testicle, and you can still have children, right? Cool. Fast forward, I'm able to wrangle myself, and in 2019, I get a job. And now we got some good insurance. Medicaid was still good, but we have some good insurance. And I let go of the Medicaid because I didn't want to make it seem like it was double dipping. I don't play with the government like that. And in 2019, I have to have another surgery. But this time, it's because I have a massive fibroid that is blocking the opening to my cervix. It's between my cervix and my uterus. And I also have vaginal polyps, right? So remember, we talked about 2017. I was having hot flashes, got the test, told me I was being dramatic, tested me anyway. Everything comes back negative. 2 years later, I have this massive fibroid blocking the entrance to my uterus, so they can't do a proper pap smear. And then also I have vaginal polyps. So I get the surgery done. This surgery was the shortest surgery I've ever had. My surgery in 2014 and my surgery in 2017 were both 6-hour surgeries. This one in 2019 was only 3. It's a lot for your body to go through. So, 2 surgeries in 2014, laparotomy, first myomectomy. 3rd myomectomy in 2017. And now I have what they call a polymectomy in 2019, right? So now we're on 4 surgeries, 2019. I get laid off from my job again. And now I don't have any insurance because I got rid of the Medicaid and the world shuts down. So, right, I get lost. In the medical system. Everyone is disconnected from me. And my period had already been weird in 2019. I was skipping periods. And then once I had my surgery, that was May 2019, I got my menstrual cycle back in June. And from June throughout, I was fine. And up until February of 2020, that was the time frame where I was menstruating. I stopped getting my menstrual cycle February 2020. I ended up at Martha's Vineyard working with a retreat group. So I was there in July of 2020, and I got my cycle very short, 2-3 days. And I got my period every month from July to September. September of 2020 was my last menstrual cycle. Remember, 2017, I was like, I'm having hot flashes. September of 2020 was my last actual menstrual cycle. And I was concerned because I had some other things happening with my vagina. I was having PMS symptoms, but not having an actual physical menstrual cycle. But there were other things that were happening that were being released from my vagina. I don't want to get too grotesque. So I spoke to another friend of mine that I went to grammar school and high school with. She is a nurse practitioner. She recommended that I go to an endocrinologist. This is when I learned that endometriosis is a hormonal issue. Working in healthcare marketing also helped me connect those dots. So if you are pre-diabetic, you are having debilitating cramps and you are having debilitating periods, you're having missed periods, you may have PCOS. All those things are hormonal and they map back to endometriosis. Just want to throw that out there. Doesn't necessarily mean you have it, but it means you should check. Because all of those different symptoms and nuances and all of those things ladder up to endometriosis. Just want to make that clear. because endometriosis is a hormonal issue. It's a disease where your hormones are in disarray. It's an imbalance, whether it's an imbalance in estrogen or an imbalance in progesterone, there is an imbalance. And that is what causes your menstrual cycle to retrograde back. You bleed in and not out. Just want to make that clear. So I went to see an endocrinologist, who is the one that helps you with hormones, your diabetes, and all that other stuff. And we did the testing. Along the line, my previous gynecologist told me that I had PCOS, right? When I did my full blood test, my full panel test, not only did I not have PCOS, I found out months before my 40th birthday that I was post-menopausal. So I had been not only perimenopausal, but going through menopause from 2017 to 2020. And now here we are. This was February 2021, post-menopausal. I was devastated. Because now, even if I wanted to have kids, I can't. And you start to wonder, because society places our worth as women as being able to produce children, right? Childbearing hips, producing heirs. That's what society places our worth as. Like, if you're not here to produce children, like, what's your purpose as a woman? There's podcasts. I've seen a couple podcast episodes where men have asked women that, well, if you're not trying to have no kids, what's your purpose? So that's how we're looked at, as breeding machines, breeders, right? So if that is the only thing that I'm good for, I know I'm not. But if that is the only thing that I'm good for and I can't produce kids, how's a man gonna date me? Because most men want kids. I haven't come across too many men that don't want no kids. They want to leave a legacy. They want to have heirs. They want to continue their lineage. I can't give you that. I don't know if I can. And at this point, I'm what they call a geriatric pregnancy. I'm a quote unquote geriatric millennial that will have a geriatric pregnancy. I don't even know if I can do that for any man. So now, do I even want, I'm scared to date. Because I got to let somebody know up front. Like, if you trying to date me because you want to get married and have kids, we can get married. I don't know if you can have kids with me, though. You might have to adopt or get some foster kids. And that could be a deal breaker for a lot of men. I watch Ready to Love. Kids is a deal breaker for a vast majority of men. So now I'm the deal breaker. There's a lot of psychological challenges with that, learning that you are postmenopausal. So of course I'm not going back to the other gynecologists that I was with, because they didn't see that, or they saw it and they didn't want to put that in my head, but they kept pressuring me to have a baby. Oh, you could go to a sperm bank. I don't want to do that. No shade to other women who have. That's not how I want to bring a child into a world. That's not for me. But they kept pressuring me to have a baby. And it was weird. And I kept trying to understand why they kept pressuring me to have a baby. Maybe they realized it and didn't want to go back and tell me. Either way, not the type of people I want to have in my life that's carrying over my vagina and my uterus. So now that I got some good insurance, I do my research. I find another gynecologist working with another nurse practitioner, totally fine with me. I'm good for nurse practitioners. You don't have to have full PhD. It's fine. If you're a nurse practitioner, I'm all for you. Because y'all are in the weeds. You know all the new tech. You know all the latest information. I did healthcare marketing. I know how allied professionals work. I'm all for the allied professionals. We cool with the MDs. Love y'all, but I'm going to work with an allied professional because I know I'm going to get that type of care. Right? Cool. That's my boots on the ground. I go to an MD when I need some surgery. But for my boots on the ground, for my daily care, I'll go with a nurse practitioner. Totally fine with that. She was a godsend. I had never had someone before they even started the pap smear ask me, is this touch okay? I never had anybody ask me that. I never had anybody ask me, are you comfortable? Does this hurt? Are you in pain? Nobody ever asked me that. Nobody cared enough to ask me that, but she did. And it was a new experience for me. And I appreciate her for that. I appreciate her for coming into my life 30 something years later and shifting how I navigate the gynecological system and gynecological care. I appreciate her and my surgeon, where I had to have a 5th surgery because I had uterine polyps again, which was why I was having the abnormal bleeding and menstrual symptoms. But to know that I now have to be on hormone therapy. I have to be on hormone therapy because I'm too young to be postmenopausal. So I had my 5th surgery in 2022. I had another polymectomy. And from that point forward, I was on estrogen and progesterone. And in February of 2023, I got my menstrual cycle back. And I've had my period ever since. And I'm on birth control. I'm not on birth control now because I quit my job and now I don't have no insurance. So I'm not on birth control anymore for now. I am using other holistic means to help keep my hormones in balance because I understand what needs to happen and how I need to maintain so that I don't regress backwards. But I share that story, 1, because I've never done it before, and 2, because this might help somebody. When I shared my story a little bit before, not in this depth, but when I shared my story on Facebook, talked about what I experienced having endometriosis, a couple of my friends who were having similar experiences, it helped them. They were able to advocate for themselves. They were able to speak to their doctor. They had the language. And that's so important for Black women. We don't necessarily have the language. We may be able to speak up for ourselves, but we don't have the language to speak to our healthcare providers and tell them what we are experiencing. So sharing my endo story hopefully will provide someone with language so that they can better navigate the gynecological care system and be able to advocate for themselves and be able to do their own research, because maybe you want to go holistic. Well, you need to get the prognosis first so you know what you're working with. And then you could go work with a doula. You could work with an herbalist to do some holistic care, because for a lot of us, that may be our only accessible means. Prescriptions are expensive. Birth control is free on insurance. But when you don't have insurance, birth control ain't free. Period. All these medications are not made for people who are uninsured. So if you do not have the means to get marketplace insurance, because that shit like $300-$400, and that's on the low end, right? That's the low end. That's the bronze package. That's not even the silver tier. That's the bronze tier. You know, the lowest package, you coming out your ass $300-$400. That's not accessible to everybody. So we have to find other means of care. You have to have communities that have resources like an Indo Black. You have to be able to go to your local herbalist and work with a doula that helps with reproductive challenges. You have to do that, because healthcare in America and the United States is not accessible. It's not for everybody. It's barely for the working class. Not even really for the working class. It's barely for us. And if you decide to be an entrepreneur, have a small business, the amount of money that you got to shell out to get independent insurance is insane. So I hope by me sharing my story, I've armed those who are listening, who have friends, family members, or yourself with these challenges. I hope that I have given enough information to inform you on how you should be navigating the system, on what is not okay, what signs and symptoms to look for, signposts, better understanding your body, having someone in the room with you. You know, my mom was so upset when she found out I was postmenopausal because she was like, I should have been in the room with you. I said, yeah, but I wasn't thinking about that. But maybe you do have someone to advocate for you in the room, to speak for you. Maybe that works for you. Have that. So, that's my story. Well, one of many stories that I'll be sharing here on the podcast. And thank you for holding space for me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tapping in. And until next time. Thank you for tapping into the Muses Lab. I hope you enjoyed this week's adventure. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and share the wealth with others. Dive deeper into the lab by joining the Pleasure Frequency list at www.themuseslab.com. Receive weekly musings, early access, and exclusive drops, as well as discounts on products and services. Thank you once again for tapping in. Until next time.